Welcome to 15 Minutes in the Forest. My name is Adam Downey with Virginia Cooperative Extension. The subject today is buffers. I'm joined by a cadre of natural resource professionals as well as the landowner. We'll be hearing from each of these individuals throughout the video on the subject of forested buffers. One point I want to bring out here at the beginning is that while we're talking about forested buffers on private land, there's a public value, a public benefit to this subject as well, and that is clean water. This water on this small stream actually ends up in the James River, which goes to Richmond. So the water that you consume in Richmond comes from watersheds like this, and the cleaner it is as it goes, the better it is for those of you in Richmond consuming the water, but also is cheaper for the sanitation end of things to get it to a drinkable state. So enjoy this subject of 15 Minutes in the Forest on buffers.
I'm Caitlin Verdue. I'm the Watershed Program Manager for the Virginia Department of Forestry, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what a buffer is and why you might want to plant one. So starting with what a buffer is, it's really simple. They're just trees by streams or other bodies of water. They can be hardwood, they can be pine, they can be a combination, comes in all different shapes and sizes, but we do recommend a minimum of about 35 feet wide if you have space for it. But if you don't, any trees by streams are better than none at all. So now that you know what a buffer is, let's talk about why you might want to plant one. So you'll hear a lot of folks talk about the water quality benefits of buffers. Trees are a fantastic way to promote clean water. As an example here, if you have land next to your body of water, say it's got farm animals on it, or bare earth, or impervious surfaces like a parking lot, when it rains, the water is going to pick up those pollutants and carry them downhill until they eventually hit a body of water. If you have trees in the way, they'll slow that water flow and intercept those pollutants, keeping them on the landscape and out of your water. Not only does that make your water cleaner, but it benefits your downstream neighbors as well. In addition to stopping those pollutants, buffers and trees can help with groundwater recharge, helping to keep water in your wells. They help mitigate stream bank erosion, so you won't see your property get eaten away by water. They can also mitigate flooding by helping to infiltrate water into the ground and slow that flow. So those are some of the water quality benefits. Outside of that, buffers provide opportunities for recreation, like bird watching or fishing. Their canopy will lower temperatures in the stream, creating better habitat for fish. This in particular has some food forest benefits, so many of these trees will produce fruits that you can eat. They can also be really beautiful. So regardless of what your own management goals are, buffers can be a really great tool in your tool belt, not only to help you achieve your goals, but to benefit your downstream neighbors as well.
Hi, Patty Nylander with Virginia Department of Forestry. I work as the Watershed Stewardship Specialist for the Central Region, which covers the Piedmont of Virginia area. So continuing our discussion about buffers, some things we want to consider are why do you want to put one in? And in this instance here, we can see that we already have the startings of a buffer. The other side of that stream is already forested. I'm standing on this side of the stream where we have some forested cover, but then we have a changing land use to agriculture where we have livestock. So the things that we're looking at, if we want to start this buffer, is what trees do we want to plant? And it's really, really important to think about the right tree in the right space. I am standing next to the iconic American sycamore, which is the perfect tree for a lot of riparian plantings. They're fast growers, they love these alluvial soils, they grow very well, and they shoot right up. So they help provide some of that shade that we're looking for on the stream. Their leaf litter falls into the creek, providing food for macroinvertebrates, so really a lot of benefits for the stream when you're thinking about the trees that you want to plant. So we think about the trees we want to plant and make sure that they're going to be ones that are going to grow within these riparian areas. Another thing we want to consider is, do we need a fence? In this case, we will need a fence because we do have livestock and agricultural land. So maybe we'll go over and take a look at that area and talk a little bit more about that. So in this area, we already had some existing trees as part of the buffer, but it was kind of narrow. And even though a narrow buffer is better than no buffer, a wider buffer is almost always better. So in this area, we decided to widen this buffer by adding these additional planted trees, and we added a fence. You can see these cows hanging out behind me. Ultimately, you know, we want to try and keep them out of the stream. That's going to be a large improvement in our water quality. So we build the fence, we widen the buffer, offer those water quality improvements. There's a variety of cost share programs that landowners can participate in to help establish buffers, to help plant trees, and even build fences. The best place to go for some of those sources is to contact your local DOF forester or to go to your local USDA service center. There's going to be different qualifying criteria, what is the land use in, those sorts of things, but they're going to be best able to answer those questions for you. And the great thing about our buffers that we can plant here in Virginia is there's a lot of variety in those programs, so undoubtedly there's going to be a program that can fit your needs. So you've probably noticed that we've looked at a lot of tubes. We're talking about buffers and the importance of trees, but we've seen a lot of shots of tubes, and you're probably wondering, what are these tubes for? Well, these tubes are to help protect the tree from animal predation. Predominantly deer, but we can also have vole problems, rabbit problems, and even mice. A lot of animals like to chew on these fresh shoots, these saplings, and if they keep mowing them down, the trees are not going to be able to establish and provide those benefits that we need as part of a buffer. So we usually plant hardwood trees with a tube. We're looking for a 4, sometimes even a 5-foot tube if deer pressure is really heavy. And along with that tube, there does need to be maintenance done in order to ensure the tree's survival. So once trees are planted, that's its own project. Then the years following those tree planting projects, we need to come back and check on these sites and make sure that the trees are growing, that we're replacing any tubes that are damaged or broken, and looking out for invasive species. Invasive species are a problem in the woods. I know you've heard about them on a lot of other videos. Well, there's just as much a problem here in our buffer sites. And a lot of times that's why we plant trees. If we were to leave this area just to grow on its own, it's very likely that we would be looking at a lot more invasive plants than native plants. So just kind of food for thought there. But yeah, so in terms of maintenance, we're just looking at making sure that the tube is still pretty close to the ground, flush to the ground. We want to make sure the stake is still in the ground, it's not cracked or broken. Sometimes with frost heaval, they can work their way out of the ground. This little thing right here is called a bird net. When we first plant the tree, we're going to have this bird net sitting on top of the tube like this, and that is to prevent things like bluebirds making their way down into the tube. Once the seedling starts to come out of the tube, that becomes less of a problem, so we just remove the net so that it can't impact the growth of the tree. The other really important consideration is the competing grass or vegetation around the tube. So you can see if you look down at the bottom of this one, it's a little bit, we've got some bare soil right around there. And on this project in particular, the landowner mows the grass to control the competing vegetation. You can use herbicide as a means to control competing vegetation, or you can use mechanical means, mowing, weed eating. You can also use physical barriers. Right behind me, just over there, you can see those kind of light brown circles. Those are actually mulch rings, again, as a means to try to control the competing vegetation around the planted tree.
Well, Cecilia, thank you for having us out to this property. It's beautiful. Appreciate the opportunity to see a buffer in place and to hear from you as a landowner. Tell us a little bit about this place and where you fit into it all.
Absolutely. So welcome to Hebron Hill Farm. We're here in Schuyler, in Albemarle County. And I am the 4th generation member of my family involved in this place. When I was in my early 20s, I decided to become more involved and start to look for grant funding programs that we could use to be more actively involved in conservation on our land here.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so one of those grant funded programs or some cost share, I think, came into play with this, but let's start with why. Why did you even start thinking about doing a buffer and kind of taking over some of this open space, which is nice access to the creek? Why do that?
Sure. So about 5 years ago, we decided to put our land under a forestry conservation easement with the Department of Forestry. And as part of that process, we started to explore other opportunities to further protect our land and our water. And so we worked with James River Association to install this 1.5 acre buffer. And we also worked with our local Soil and Water Conservation District to make sure that our cattle were no longer sourcing their water from the creek. So we put in fencing and separate watering system for them to make sure that we are adequately stewarding our riparian areas.
Okay, very good. So tell us about how you, what this process was like for you. Did you yourself plant some trees? Did you pick the species? Tell us the story.
Sure. So I discovered that JRA had this program, and we submitted our application. We had a sort of planning meeting with Anne Marie, who was our contact there, and she asked us what our priorities for the project were. We decided that we wanted to create a food forest, prioritizing fruit and nut species and supporting the native ecosystems along our stream bank. So once we developed our priorities, she drafted a project plan, planting plan, and I recruited some friends and family to come help do the planting, and JRA also brought in about 24 volunteers, and so on a cold day in November, we planted these 600 trees with that group of about 30.
And was that a year and a half ago?
That was 3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. Okay, very good. I noticed a pawpaw back there, so in a few years maybe there'll be some yummy fruit there if you can beat the bears to it, I suppose.
We've
right?
been eagerly waiting.
Yeah.
Eagerly waiting.
Very good. Well, for other landowners who may have a situation something like this, where whether there's livestock involved or just a lack of buffer before the water gets there, and they maybe are thinking about a buffer project, what advice would you have for them?
Well, one of my priorities in the course of this project was to really plant for the future. And so recognizing that what we're doing today is impacting future generations and many decades to come. And so one of my words of sort of advice would be just to think about what you want your riparian ecosystem to feel like and to look like many, many years into the future, and prioritize creating an experience and a welcoming place for the flora and fauna and also for our human communities.
Well, thank you. Any last words that you would like to share with our listeners?
I guess I'll just say that I got involved in this project and in connection with this particular piece of land when I was in my early 20s. And one of my motivations was to steward this place and care for this land for future generations the way that prior generations had done so. I see this project as a way that we can be responsible to the land and to the broader networks that we are a part of.
Thanks again for having us out here.
Welcome anytime.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Amber Ellis, the Restoration Director with the James River Association, and we're coming to you from along Ivy Creek, which is a tributary of the James. The James River Association is a nonprofit founded back in 1976. Our core mission is just protecting the James and connecting people to the James and tributaries like Ivy Creek and others across the watershed. The James River Buffer Program is one of our flagship programs. We launched it in 2019 thanks to funding from the Virginia Environmental Endowment. This program is unique compared to some others. It covers 100% of the cost of the project, from site preparation, installation, and 3 years of maintenance, which are the crucial years to really getting these projects up and going. The program is administered by multiple partners, which is also unique. The James River Association, Department of Forestry, as well as the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. You may interact with any of us if you apply to the program. Since its launch in 2019, we've installed over 800 acres across the Middle and Upper James watersheds, which is amazing. It's eligible to anyone. You don't have to be a certain type of landowner. Basically, if you have water on your property, it's in need of a forest buffer, and you're in the Middle or Upper James watersheds, you're eligible. So most of our projects are installed by contractors, but a lot of them are also installed by volunteers, like we did here at Hebron Hill. A great way to engage the community in these projects and help with education. If you are interested in learning more about the James River Buffer Program, just visit our website. It's www.jamesriverbuffers.org. And that can be to learn about how to get a project for your own property. If you don't have water and you still want to get involved, there's lots of opportunities to come out and volunteer and help us plant trees. So definitely come out and help with that. If you're not in the James River watershed and want to do something like this, there are other organizations and programs across the state that you can definitely take advantage of. If you reach out to us, we can get you in touch with them as well.